This is Father James Bozeman, aka Jamie Bozeman from Luxury. And as it turns out, you are listening to the Rumors Are True podcast.
Welcome, this is Jeremy Allen Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Hey, welcome to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome the legend, Wayne Everett. You know Wayne from the bands The Prayer Chain, the Lassie Foundation, Starflyer 59, Cush, and his solo projects. So honored to have Wayne on this podcast. It's been a long time coming, so I'm really excited for you to hear this latest episode with Wayne Everett. Wayne Everett, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Absolutely, man. I'm such an honor. I really, really mean that when I say that. So I'm just really stoked to have you on finally. I know we've been talking about it for a while, so I'm really, really glad it's finally happening. So, yeah, let's talk about what's new in your world right now. What's currently in your world right now, Wayne?
Well, I've got a new a reissue of a remastered version of my very first solo record, King's Queens. That's going to be coming out on May the 19th via Clear Story AV. And so I'm really excited about that. It's a brand new remaster. It's going to come out on vinyl also, two different kinds of vinyl, which is fun. And then we're also doing a single for one of the kind of the bonus song. The first time, the original release had a bonus song for the CD called Babalu, and so we decided it would be fun to make like a single of that with a new studio version of the song. Anybody who's familiar with it knows that the version that was originally released was a live version. And so this is the studio version of that also. So there'll be those two versions on the single. So very stoked about that. Pretty exciting. Also have like literally right now have the prayer chain is working on doing a Kickstarter to help raise some money to record some concerts that we're going to do in September, and to be able to record and video those shows. And so we're trying to raise some money to do that. But yeah, we're going to play 3 shows in September coming up. So yeah,
that's exciting,
man. Learn how to play the drums again.
Yeah, it's been a couple years since you've done it. Are you excited for those shows?
I am. Yeah, it's going to be really fun to go to Seattle and Nashville, and then we'll also play here in Southern California in Anaheim. All 3 of the 4 weekends in September. It'll be fun to see some folks and to hang out with the guys in the band too, because we always have a fun time whenever we're hanging out. And so it'll be challenging though, because for me, I don't play a lot of drums these days. So and I don't own a drum kit, so I have to borrow some some friends' kits and rehearsal space in order to try to get some kind of chops. If I can. We'll see.
Absolutely. And playing a long show, that can be exhausting. So I'm sure that's got to get your body built back up to be able to play that long. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. It's a challenge. It's a challenge at any age, but then of course as you get older, it gets more challenging.
Absolutely. That's cool. I'm excited. I'm probably going to be at the Nashville one, so that'll be cool to hang awesome. Out and see you guys. So I'm excited to be up there that way. So let's talk about growing up for you, Wayne. Maybe some bands, some records, some influences, maybe even some shows that kind of pushed you in the direction of music.
Well, we had a lot of music in our house growing up. My mom was really into music and still is. And my grandfather, her dad, he was a Swedish fiddler in the folk group, the folk dancing group in Sweden. And then when he moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota in the early 1900s, he was the fiddler in the folk dancing group. And then my grandmother was one of the dancers, and I think that's how they met. Cool. And so then they moved out to California during the Depression because he got a job out here. And so that's where my mom grew up here in Los Angeles. So there was music around. We were, he would always be playing the fiddle, of course. He'd always be doing that. And then my mom was really into, a lot of the music at the time. This is like the late 70s, mid to late 70s. This is like, the Bee Gees and Boz Scaggs, but also like Stevie Wonder and James Brown. She really got me into James Brown a lot. Really, she was a real big fan of him. And then I was just sort of exploring music on my own. I'm the oldest in the house. I was the oldest kid in the house. And so I, had to kind of explore and try to find, I was listening to pop music, pop radio and stuff like that. And so I was really into like, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts and then later I got into like the Sex Pistols and punk rock. And then, of course, new wave I was really into. Like, I think I remember in junior high, my favorite bands were The Jam, the Sex Pistols, U2, and Simple Minds, or something like that. It was kind of a weird combo of
Yeah,
of bands.
that is.
But so yeah, I was really into that, and yeah, that was how I kind of started in, and then I took up the ukulele because I thought it'd be easier to learn that than to learn the guitar. And so I started trying to play like Simple Minds songs on the ukulele, which is kind of ridiculous, but so that was kind of my first sort of musical foray. And then I started writing songs on the ukulele and stuff. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so that was the beginning of it.
What after you did the ukulele, what did you pick up the drum sticks or what guitar? What was kind of your next steps with that?
Yeah, I can't remember why. I always really loved I always really loved the drums. I think I remember distinctly going to like play basketball at the local boys club, and you walk in there and they had like a stereo system that was always on. And I remember distinctly hearing "We Got the Beat" by the Go-Go's, and I remember thinking, "This is the greatest thing I've ever heard. These drums are so cool. I want to figure out what this is. How do you play that? How do you
Yeah.
make that sound?" So I think that's kind of where my love of drums started, and then my parents were really supportive. They let me have like a practice kit, like a pad kit, and then they got me an electronic kit, and then finally after a couple of years they got me an actual kit, an acoustic drum kit, and that was when things started getting quite loud in the house. So it was like an upstairs downstairs kind of situation, and so what I would do was I would take the mattress off of my bed and I'd put it up in the stairwell to try to muffle the sound coming out from my where I was practicing the drums. So but I don't think it really did much.
Did your parents love it or did they hate it?
Oh, they I don't know. My mom, she worked at home my whole life, and so she heard it, and I just, I can only imagine the pain, of listening to somebody trying to learn how to play the drums. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they were smart. I technically kind of learned how to play on the pads and on the electronic kit. So by the time the acoustic kit happened, wasn't a good drummer, but I was at least not hacking it as much as I would have if I'd started straight with the acoustic kit.
When you played did you feel like you got, as you were getting older, did you feel like you got a little more proficient at it and just felt more comfortable with it? And, did you feel like, wow, I'm actually really good at this?
I think it's just a matter of, just practicing, just like any other skill. I mean, even at my best, I'm not the greatest drummer in the world. And, but I took some lessons when I was young. And then for me, it took me a long time to learn how to play to a click, which is why all of the early prayer chain recordings, there's not a click on almost all of it because I literally couldn't play to it.
Wow.
So there was a lot of room to grow, I guess you could say back then even. And so I think, it was just a matter of practicing, and we would, when I first joined the prayer chain, I was going to school in about 35 miles away from where the other guys were, and so I would drive back from school on a Friday, and we would rehearse on Saturday and Sunday, and then I'd drive back home on Sunday evening to go to school. So we practiced all the time. So I slowly got better. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I slowly got better. But drums have always been a challenge for me because I really wasn't trained. I didn't really practice properly when I was really young and learning, and so I think I took a lot of bad instincts into the music, and sometimes it turned out pretty well because of that. But other times it definitely held me back from doing some of the things that I wanted to do because I just physically couldn't do them.
I gotcha. Well, you mentioned the prayer chain. Let's talk about the beginning of the prayer chain. Kind of bring me through how that all kind of came together and what the beginning of the band was like.
So I went buddy of mine, let's see, this would have been my second year of college, I think, or second year of college. I went with a buddy of mine down to see a show by a band called, because we had liked this band called Utanda in high school. It's a Christian band, and so they were playing down in Laguna Beach at this club called Club Post Nuclear, and so we went down there, and the prayer chain was opening. They had a different drummer, of course, and at the end of the show, Tim, the singer, was like, "Hey, thanks to so and so for filling in on the drums because we don't have a full-time drummer yet." And I kind of looked at my buddy. I said, "These guys are pretty good. Maybe I'll talk to them." So I did.
Wow.
I went and talked to Tim, and he kind of half blew me off because he said that I looked like a child, and so he's like, "Who's this little kid?" So I tried out for the band, and I got it. And
Wow.
so that was how that started. And then, we would just practice all the time, and we would play any show that we could find. We'd play at clubs, churches, anywhere. And that was kind of how we started going. And slowly we were able to open for bigger bands, a lot of bands in the Christian rock scene. And so we got to open for them and draw more people to the shows and stuff. And so that was how we grew. And then we finally got a record deal and were able to make records and stuff. So that was
absolutely,
and then touring and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Reunion, kind of how that came into the picture. And was there any other labels interested, or was that just kind of the only thing that kind of was there at the time?
There were a couple of other labels that were interested, but Reunion was the one that had kind of the best combo package of the best sort of opportunities for getting the music out to as wide as possible, an audience, and then also the kind of the creative independence that we really wanted. So it worked out really well, I think. I mean, they didn't know what to do with us because they didn't have any rock bands, and that was kind of our biggest sort of question about them, is do they even know what to do with us?
Yeah.
But basically they created a sub label and hired people to specifically work for us or work with us to help make that happen, because they probably, from their perspective at the time, it's like, this is what the kids are listening to,
Yeah.
So
was it? I know it's a primarily Christian label, so I mean, did you guys feel awkward being on it, or was it just kind of like, did you? I guess was your vision like, hey, we can, like you said, kind of stand out, but like, what was that like? I know that it's what Michael W. Smith and all that stuff. Like, what was that kind of like for you guys?
Yeah, we were all we had all been into Christian rock music and stuff, and seen all the bands here in Southern California, because there was a scene, and so we all liked that music, but we liked all the other stuff that influenced us: the Stone Roses, the Jane's Addiction, the Mission UK. Those were all huge influences on the prayer chain when I met those guys, and they turned me on to some of that music too, and then. But we weren't interested in necessarily being on in a Christian music scene necessarily. It was just that's a scene that we know about, but we just didn't get any interest from any other labels, and so any mainstream labels, and so we went with the best offer that we had, which was with Reunion, and we were just trying to do our thing. It wasn't really about who else was on the label or anything. There's one kind of funny story where we went to Nashville for a bunch of a conference thing. Oh, it was around the music awards, the Christian music awards, I think, or something like that. Anyway, we were all out there, and there was a whole, it was the kind of thing where all these artists are out there, and so the distributor, Word, I think there was Word. Anyway, they did this big luncheon, and they had all these artists that were distributed by Word, and they were doing all these songs and things, and this whole presentation thing, this whole show kind of, while we were sitting at these tables, and we walked in there, and we looked like the biggest weirdos with the way we were dressed. I think I had flared pants with the corduroy and Star Wars shirt or something, but nobody was wearing Star Wars stuff in that time. It was kind of a dead franchise at that time, so it was just sort of, it was just kind of silly. I think I had long hair, I had barrettes in my hair, And so they asked all the certain artists, like, hey, can you send one of the people in your group to go and be on stage at the end? They're going to do this like big sort of "We Are the World" kind of song that we're gonna sing. And so of course all the guys were like, Wayne, you're doing it because you look the most ridiculous out of all of us, and it'll look the weirdest up on stage. And that was kind of how we made certain decisions like that. But so I went up there, and the minute I got up on the stage and walked across the stage, I could see everyone in the audience kind of whispering to the person next to them, like, "Who the hell's that guy?" Like, what is this supposed to be happening here? And so and so then right behind me, what's his name? Michael W. Smith walked. It was the last person on the stage after me, and he walked up to me, and he kind of whispers in my ear. He's like, "What are we singing here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. They just gave me this card with the lyrics on it. I don't know what this song is." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And so then the guys later told me that, like, yeah, when you walked up on the stage, everyone started like whispering, like, "What the hell's that guy doing on there?" But then the moment Michael W. Smith, said something to you, they're like, "Oh, okay, he's all right.
He's got
okay.
cred."
Michael W. Smith is okay with the guy, so I'm okay there. Yeah.
That's hysterical. I love that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Was the song lame?
I don't remember what it was. It was I don't remember what it was. But it was some sort of ballady type of "We Are the World" kind of song. I'm not.
That's hysterical. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Whirlpool EP briefly. Obviously signed a reunion, and you put this EP out. Kind of bring me through the recording of that, kind of your thoughts on it, and kind of how you, maybe looking back on it, how you feel about it now.
Boy, this is deep memory. Well, let's see. Whirlpool. So the very beginning of the band, we were doing recordings over at Neverland Studios, which was still here in Southern California at the time, and with Dave Hackbarth engineering, and we recruited Steve Hindalong to produce because Andy, our guitar player, he had done some work for Dan Michaels, because Dan Michaels had seen an old band of Andy and Eric's. And he went up to Andy and asked him to work on a solo thing that he was doing at the time. Dan was. And so Andy asked Dan if he could ask Steve if he'd be interested in producing our demos and stuff. And so that was how we met Steve, and we really clicked with Steve. And I did, especially, of course, being the drummer. And then we also, just were really into a lot of the same things and percussion and all that stuff.
Sure.
And so he produced all that stuff, including Whirlpool. And, it was really, Whirlpool was kind of like almost like the best songs of the ones that of the first batch of songs that we wrote, and that we had been playing at every show that we, had been doing at the time. And so that's why, that was how that worked out. We did all that stuff at Neverland, and Steve produced it. It was, of course, nervy and exciting, and I was terrified, but it, I think it turned out all right. All things considered, it sounds like the beginning of a band.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. Was the label stoked on it?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, they loved it. They really loved the song "I Believe." Yeah. Even though they didn't quite understand it. A lot of people didn't understand it, what we meant in that song, but they loved the song, and they were super into it. So they were hyped about it, and that was and it's cool. It's nice when you hear positive things from the label, because you know that they're working hard for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you put the EP out that does fairly well, it sounds like. When do you start working on Shawl? Maybe bring me through the Shawl record, kind of your thoughts, memories of that, recording that record. Your first full length was, I'm sure, the EP, you're a lot more time in the studio at this point. So kind of bring me through the recording of Shawl and your thoughts on it.
I think by the time Whirlpool came out, I believe we had already been writing songs for Shawl, or whatever that was going to become Shawl. You're going to find that I'm really bad with details, especially with my memory. The guys, everybody who knows me well, complains about my terrible memory. But it was, we were definitely wanting to go into something that was a little bit more. We were doing some of the songs that we'd been doing live were kind of a little bit more, I'd say, influenced by like the psychedelic kind of Jane's Addiction sort of mode, and that was what we really, really loved at that time. And so, trying to tap into that kind of energy, and of course, in the live shows, those things went over really well, and so that was really fun and encouraging. And so we did that, and we wanted to, and then we were also starting to really explore indigenous music and being exposed to some of that, because there were some collections of it starting to appear in record stores. World music became like a thing, in a record store that we hadn't really exploded yet, and was still a little bit kind of like, oh, you need to be like you need to subscribe to National Geographic, and then you can get access to this 10 CD collection, And so we did stuff like that, and just really fell in love with the way that some of that music was made, and just the emotion behind it, and that was when we started to kind of explore, well, how can we fuse this kind of music, or at least the spirit of this kind of music, into like what we love about like rock and roll and punk and new wave or post-punk. And so Shaw was kind of the beginning of stuff like that. Like with a song like Crawl and 58 and some other things that just had some things that we felt were a little bit more interesting, or added a little bit of a extra spice to something to make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. Was the recording of that pretty easy, pretty hard? I mean, was it grueling?
It was eventful. We went through, let's see, what happened? We got to the mixing phase and things kind of went haywire. And we ended up having to switch, mixers and, mixing engineers, I should say. And so things were getting a little bit wacky towards the end, if I remember correctly. I do remember during those sessions, that was the first time I saw the movie The Holy Mountain. Chris Colbert brought that one around, so we were all kind of entranced by that as we were, sitting outside of the studio, kind of waiting your turn or whatever. And what else was it? The studio that we were at didn't like it that we were drinking beer there or something like that. I think there's a big problem with that.
Was it a Christian?
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
So they had a problem with it. So it goes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did you have everything written when you went into the studio for Shaw, or did you write anything in the studio?
We did everything. We had worked with Steve in pre-production, pretty substantially, I would say. He really helped us, really fine-tune some things and make some slightly different choices that made certain songs, I think, a lot better and more interesting. And then what else? They everything was written for sure, because we didn't want to go in there unprepared. There was some improvisation that happened in the studio. A couple of weird little oddball things, but nothing really that eventful. They were just like little texture thingies.
Sure. How did you feel when you finally heard it done, and how do you feel now?
We were very excited. We thought it sounded great. We felt like it captured what we were trying to do, for better or worse, and so we were pretty happy with it overall. There are probably some things that I think we talked about that we wish were a little bit different at the time. For me, I think there's a few really fun songs on that. Not fun, but like a few good songs on there. I think a song like 58 is really interesting.
Such a good song. I love that song.
It's a different kind of a. It's just an oddball kind of song that I think just took us forever to write, because just trying to play, especially me, trying to play in 5/8 time or 5/4 or whatever. We couldn't even figure out what the time signature was. It was 58 or 5/8 or 5/4, or I don't know. We couldn't figure it out. 10/8. We couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, just stuff like that, I think that are the real highlights, and then of course experimenting with percussion and stuff, or really the first time that I had ever in the studio been able to really work with percussion and think about percussion as a texture, and think about it as a writing tool,
Sure.
as a way to take a song and just give it a little bit of an extra something in certain parts, to help it do what it wants to do, but in an interesting and unique way.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back on it right now, how do you feel about it?
I think it was a good step. I think that there were, like I said, I think that there's some songs that there's, a few songs on there that I still really enjoy. I can see where some of the other ones, maybe they're not as strong as songs necessarily, but I can see why we did it at that time, and
Yeah.
it made sense to do it at that time. And that was like really, a step in our musical growth, because it's hard to, I think if you just keep doing the same thing, then eventually you're going to have a whole record of songs that, like, I could have never made this record and the world would be completely the same.
Yeah.
But so I think unless you're doing something exactly the same, then I think you're taking steps, hopefully, that are growing your songwriting and performance and stuff like that. That's going to help you make the next thing better, hopefully. And
Absolutely, man.
That's the way I see it. That record is, I think it was a good step in a good direction.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Was Reunion pumped on it?
Yes, they liked it. They they were super excited about it. And yeah, they worked hard for it, and we went on the road, and we went all over the place for the first time in our lives, to places, of course, we've never been to, and then got to play in Europe and stuff, and it was really, really cool. Got to go to Russia one time. That was amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, just an amazing, just a life experience.
That's rad, dude. That's really cool. Who were you touring with when you went out?
When we went out on the road, let's see, who did we play with? See, our very first trip was with the Violet Burning. This was even, I think, before we even put out a record. And then let's see, who did we tour with? Well, we ended up doing, of course, a lot of festivals, and we would meet up with a lot of the bands from here, and meet up with other folks, like getting to know, bands that were, outside of Southern California, and getting to get to know them. It was really fun. Let's see, and then when we went abroad, we were playing festivals, and then one time we played a festival, and then we're the backing band for Mike Rowe doing like the 77.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we got to do that one time. Yeah. That's amazing. That was a harrowingly it was frightening for me.
I bet, man.
Because Aaron Smith is just like such an amazing drummer, and I just really respected him so much, and I just didn't want to mess it up. And Mike was really, really gracious, with me. So
that's cool.
And he's since become a friend. So it's like it all worked out fine. But that was a really fun trip.
That's really cool, man. I love hearing that. Okay, so Shaw comes out, you hit the road, you're playing festivals and whatnot. Bring Me Through Mercury, the next record, man. This for me personally, I love all your records, but this is the one for me. Blew my mind. I literally remember the day I bought it. Actually, my mom worked at a Christian bookstore, and she bought it for me because I gave her my money. And man, this is a game changer for me, and I know a lot of people. Bring me through the recording of Mercury. Kind of your thoughts on it as well.
Thank you. Really kind of you to say. So as we got deeper into that tour, as we got deeper into like being in this Christian music scene that was, kind of odd for us, and some of the people we met were kind of weird and like, I don't know, there was a certain there's a certain way that the Christian music subculture is, that's really it's really it's a little bubble. It really is
Yeah.
like a bubble, and it has its own language, and its own way of doing things. And that was something that we just didn't really, subscribe to that much.
Sure.
And so, it ruffled some feathers, and we just kind of felt like we really didn't belong there that much. And so I think that's kind of how some of the topics came up for that were going into the songwriting for Mercury. Feeling, of distance from other people, alienation. I think the band also itself was kind of starting to splinter a little bit, with some differing perspectives on where the band should go and
Sure.
do and stuff. And so I think there was some friction starting there. And then but the actual, like, the writing was really interesting. I was getting more and more into percussion. I When I was in college, I was still in college at that time, and went to did like a study abroad program during one summer for 6 weeks in France, and I got really into some African percussion. The scene of African music is of course really popular in France and Paris. Yeah. And so I got really into those types of rhythms and bought myself a djembe and all that stuff. And, and then just when we started thinking about what we wanted to do for Mercury, we were like, well, let's really lean into this kind of, just something a little bit more avant-garde. And I started, I thought, well, maybe we start with like a percussion thing and just see where that goes. And so we would literally sit in Tim Tabor's parents' house in like the living room, and we would just sit on chairs, and I would play my djembe or some other little percussion thing that I brought, and we would just start jamming things out, this music. And that was how a lot of the songs on Mercury started, was these like, I would start with like a little pattern, and then the guys would start in with just either a bass line or a bendy guitar line or something, and then we would just sort of build the song from there. And so it was really, really fun, very, very organic, and and especially when we got to recording it, it was really, really fun, because that was a really exciting time to bring this kind of oddball songs, I would say, in some ways, and bring them to life somehow. And there was a lot of improvisation in the studio. There was a lot of like, let's take these building blocks and just see where they go. And and then there were also some kind of more conventional sort of rock songs in there too. And so it was just a really, really, really fun time recording, especially at the beginning, like recording and just coming up with new things to try. And there was just a real sense of just fearless adventure, and we really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So you obviously submitted the Communion record, obviously to the label, and they, from what I'm understanding, they were into. Is that kind of what happened, and kind of what was that feeling like?
Yeah, we gave them the record. I don't know if we had a title for it, but we gave them the record. They didn't think there were any singles, and so they wanted us to record 2 more songs. And so we did, and one of them was kind of, I think one of them was as close to not a pop song, but we were really into Stereolab at the time also. And so we made this song that was like a really kind of monotonal, straight Stereolab kind of song. And then we did another song that was like 7.5 minutes of like this big epic like Verve rip-off song. And so, neither one of them are really good substitutes for really good singles on their own at all. But that was what we gave them because we were jerks like that.
Well, I mean, when you finally heard Mercury completed and it was done, and it sounds like it didn't go the way you initially wanted it to, but just overall, how did you feel about the end of when the record was done?
We were very excited. We thought it was a really really exciting and in some ways fairly original kind of album in terms of like the music and what we were trying to do. I think we accomplished a lot of it. It's, I'm not saying it's like the greatest record in the world, but it's like we were very happy. We felt like we actually accomplished what we tried to do, even though we didn't know exactly what we were going after.
Yeah, absolutely.
The things that we talked about and the things that the ideas that we talked about and the tones and the emotional language that we wanted to speak, we feel like we actually were able to speak it and we were able to communicate it in the way that we wanted to. So we felt it was, I personally felt it was a real success on that level. Even if people hated the record, I was happy that because a lot of times when you record, it's like sometimes you're trying to go for a certain thing, and for one reason or another, it just doesn't turn out the way that you had expected it to or wanted it to. But with this one, this wasn't the case with this record. It turned out pretty much the way that we had envisioned it, and so
that's amazing.
Very stoked about that.
Well, looking back on it now, I mean, it's almost 30 years. How do you feel about it now?
I like it. I mean, during the process of starting to think about how I'm going to play the drums again, I've been listening to it a little bit, which I haven't done in a really long time, and listening to it closely and listening to test pressings and stuff like that of the vinyl that we're going to print. And it's like, you're listening really closely to it for different reasons. But it was, I think I'm proud of it. I think it did, like I said, it did what I wanted it to do. And I think it did largely what the other guys wanted it to do. And, and I was really thankful that a lot of people responded to it. A lot of people, it touched them in a way that we had hoped that they would be touched. And we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That, like I said, that's for me, it's a top 10 record for me. It's always been, always will be. Man, it changed my world, and I mean that in the best way possible. I always liked a lot of the Christian alternative bands and stuff, but man, there was something about Mercury that just it baffled me because I'd never heard anything like it, and it's just to this day, it's still, I listen to it 2-3 times a month. And I got to be a part of one of the initial vinyl. Or the repress, I should say, when we pressed the vinyl a couple years ago. So I got to actually physically do it with my hands, which was really cool. So cool. It was like, it was awesome. And I'm really super honored to have even been a part of that. But yeah, man,
Thanks,
so absolutely. The record comes out and you hit the road. I got to see you guys on this tour on the Mercury tour twice, with Starflyer, I think, on one of them, and then I think I saw you at a festival as well. What was that touring like for this record?
It was pretty grueling. We wanted to control the whole show, so we got we brought our own lights, our own PA. I
remember the rider truck.
A projector, screen type of thing, and which was kind of medium tech in those days. And because we wanted to put on a whole show kind of that was very a very specific kind of show where we had stuff going on in between songs and different visuals and all this. We wanted it to be this very immersive experience, like we had kind of intended some of the songs on the album to be. And so that was a lot of work because, we didn't have any extra crew or anything. We had, one roadie slash stage manager slash, a tour manager slash, it was like, and then we hired a front of house engineer, and then also a lighting guy, and so that was it. And so it was a lot of work on unpacking all that stuff every day, and the tours. It was like, in those days, every day that you're not every day that you're not playing is a day that you're not making any money. So so it was a really packed schedule. I think we did it was like something like one of the legs was like 28 shows in 30 days or something like that. It was something bonkers like that. And then, and a lot of, especially when you're coming from the West, it's a lot of long drives because, there aren't a lot of, it's not like on the East Coast where there's a lot of places that are closer together.
And weren't you playing drums for Starflyer too? I feel like you were.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I was playing drums for Starflyer, one of the opening bands. So I was kind of playing the two shows.
Double duty. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was pretty exhausting, but it was really fun. We had a lot of fun, and we got a really, really good response from the audiences on that trip. It was a lot of it was very communal in that sense. It really felt like a strong connection with the folks who were there, and which is kind of ironic given the subject matter of a lot of the record. But yeah, we had a really, really good time doing the touring for that record.
That's awesome, man. Well, I know you kind of mentioned some tension in the studio. Let's talk about kind of the end of the band from your perspective. Just kind of how that dissolved, and obviously things are good now, but I'm sure at the time that was pretty rough.
Yeah, it was rough. We were doing, I don't need to get into the whole thing, but it's just like, basically it's just kind of like mostly why any other band breaks up. It's like you're kind of tired of seeing each other all the time, and you have different ideas about what you want to do creatively with the rest of your life. And at a certain point, I think we realized that, being in this band was not going to be the way that it was going to work out best for everybody. And so we called it a day and started some different projects. Andy and Eric and I did this Cush project, which was really fun and really satisfying. It was good to sort of scratch the itch of doing that kind of music, that kind of a little bit more expansive kind of the Verve kind of vibe. And so that was really fun. And also to work with Mike Knott on that was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I played with Starflyer for a little while longer. Played on a few of their records.
Let's talk about it briefly. Obviously Americana, the Fashion Focus, and Everybody Makes Mistakes, pivotal records as well. Kind of bring me through your time in Starflyer and just maybe some highlights from those records.
Yeah. So I met, we met Jason Martin. I think he was just hanging around the studio, the Green Room studio in Huntington Beach, California, where we did a lot of recording here. And I was kind of hanging around the studio a lot in those days too. And so met some folks there, got to meet Jason, and then we became friends, and he was like, and then he asked if he liked the kind of the background vocal type of stuff that I was doing with the Lassie Foundation, and the kind of falsetto-y kind of thing, and he was wanting that element to be a part of Starflyer, and so he asked me to come and produce the vocals for the Gold album when they were recording their Gold album. And so I produced the vocals and sang some background vocals on that record. and then started playing drums with them. And so we did Le Vancoeur
Oh, I
EP.
love that EP, man.
Thanks. And then after that, it was what was it? It was Americana,
Arcana.
and that was with Eric Campuzano's in the band with for that one. That was kind of the power trio,
Yeah.
as close to Southern rock as you're ever going to hear Jason Martin. Um, and then and then and then we did the Fashion Focus, which was a really both the Fashion Focus and Everybody Makes Mistakes were both really fun records to make. We did it at the Green Room with Gene Eugene, and he was a huge fan of Jason's and really brought some interesting elements to it from like a keyboard, but also like of course just general production kind of element, making really interesting choices. And helping to kind of push Jason and myself, into some different directions, which turned out really, really great.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So
how
that
do you
was really,
feel? How do you feel about those records?
I like him. I think I think Jason's a really great songwriter, and I think he's got some of his best work, I think, is on those records. In my opinion. It was really fun experience, and also exciting to watch him and Gene work in the studio, and just to watch their minds kind of collaborate. And so it was a great experience for me.
Of those three full lengths, what's your favorite one of those?
I don't know. I would say maybe the Fashion Focus, just because that was kind of the first kind of proper collaboration with Gene, and it just had like a real kind of open palette type of approach in terms of production. There was a lot of there were a lot of ideas discussed and a lot of collaboration. Jason in those days really, really had a good vision for what he wanted to hear in terms of like the spirit, and sometimes in exactly like the instrumentation sometimes, or sound. And Gene would take those ideas and then sometimes would tweak them in a way that maybe none of us had thought of yet, or neither Jason nor I had thought of yet. And so so it was just a really fun time creating with these really cool songs. Jason wrote this cool collection of songs, and so it's always exciting when you're playing a song that you think is really strong and that you enjoy. So
absolutely,
it really motivates you to want to make it the best it can be.
Absolutely. What was the touring like for those records? I do remember seeing you guys quite a few times. And I speaking of, you mentioned France earlier. I think you spoke in French the whole time on one of the shows that I was at, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Still to this day, probably one of the most rock star badass things I've ever seen at a show.
Oh, it's ridiculous, it's just silly. It was really simply because, Jason, especially when I first started playing with him, was like a little bit kind of not stage fright, but like he didn't like the banter. He didn't like, the in between song banter, and in those days it took a little bit longer to tune in between. And so he didn't want to be bothered to do that. And so instead of having a bunch of dead air between songs, I was just like, oh, all right, I'll just start speaking in French for the hell of it, and just, annoy people.
It was so cool.
And it worked.
I probably talk about that, every couple of months. I'll talk about like shows and stuff, and I'm like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So, hey, it worked for at least for me to enjoy that at least. Yeah, man, awesome. Like being part of those three records, man, those are, monumental records as well. Man, that's so cool that just being a part of, not so much, or coming into another band, I should say, but putting your mark on it. I think that's awesome. And, it sounds like you enjoyed that time.
Yeah, it did. We had a really good time. Really, really understood each other musically. Had similar type of kind of a musical aesthetic of what we thought the band should sound like, in terms of what the drumming should be. And so yeah, it was a really good collaboration, and yeah, it was hard. It was a tough, because it was a slog. The touring was really tough, but we had a lot of really fun moments in it too, and all of us have some really good memories of those.
That's awesome. I love hearing that, man. What made you decide to leave Starflyer?
Well, I wasn't making enough money. I couldn't survive really. So I needed to stop, and I couldn't tour anymore. I had to go home and get a normal job, and
Yeah. No, I get
that was
that.
it. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, yeah, it's, unfortunately in the Christian alternative world, that seems to be the case quite a bit for a lot of people. So I definitely, it totally makes sense. You obviously made the right decision in terms of, your future and stuff. Well, let's talk about the Lassie Foundation. I know we kind of skipped over that a little bit, but bring me through the beginning of Lassie Foundation, and let's kind of go through the records briefly, and kind of your viewpoint on them now, and just bring me through Lassie.
So Eric and I, Eric Campazon and I, when we were taking a break from the prayer chain, or doing, let me start again. So Eric and I, towards the end of the prayer chain, we had already kind of started dabbling in writing some songs together. And so by the time the prayer chain ended, we had already kind of like started really putting together some songs, and weren't sure what exactly to do with them, and then decided to record them with Andy at his parents' house. And so he did everything on the first Lassie Foundation EP called California, and
so good.
Thanks. We did all of that at his parents' house, and it was a lot of math and engineering, because it's imagine what kind of happened in the old days. We only had we only had 8 tracks, and so there was a lot of bouncing involved. And so, or let's see, did we have 4 at the beginning? I can't remember. It was some combination of 4 and 8. And so it was a lot of bouncing tracks, and deciding that a tambourine was going to be really loud or really soft, and committing to it, because you can't do it again. You have to just record it, and it's recorded and mixed at the same time. But yeah, that was, Eric and I decided we wanted to do a band that was kind of like that band Curve, that we really loved, or maybe like Curve or Medicine, another band that we both loved, and both bands that had these really cool female singers, and so we really wanted to have a female singer, and but we just didn't know anybody who really. I mean, we knew a lot of really amazing female singers, but there was a certain kind of vibe we were looking for, and no one we knew had that kind of vibe with their singing. And so we thought, well, let's I'll just sing, because I can sing better than Eric does, and then Eric will play guitar because he plays guitar better than I do. And so that was kind of how we decided the roles. And then it was kind of also like, in order to kind of do some of that very kind of high, wispy sort of sound of the vocals, like Tony Halliday from Curve, basically I was having to like sing in falsetto and stuff. And so we thought that was kind of interesting, because at the time there weren't a lot of like rock bands doing that type of thing. That was more of like an R&B or funk kind of thing, or soul, or even choral music or something. But yeah, so we thought that was kind of an interesting approach, even though we had originally intended there to be a female lead singer. So we did California, and then we started doing shows, and I believe you had my friend Matt McCarty on an earlier episode. I loved that one. I loved hearing. I never knew that his dad worked at KBIG. KBIG was a big radio station here.
That's awesome.
Early 80s.
That's so cool.
I thought that was a real fun little trivia bit. Anyway, but Matt came on. He was our first bass player. Yeah. And so and so he played the bass, and I think at first we did the drum machine. Is that
Wow.
right? Did we do drum machine at first, or oh boy, how did that work? We tried a drum machine at the very beginning, and that worked for a little bit, but it was just too limiting, and we didn't have the
Sure.
technology that we do now, and it just wasn't that exciting. It wasn't doing what we wanted it to do. And so yeah, we started playing shows all around town here in LA, just all the clubs and stuff, and just doing that, and then eventually we we were recording. We recorded Pacifico we had a manager at the time, and he had an office out in Glendora, and so we went out there and recorded Pacifico there, with Frank playing drums, Jeremy Wood playing drums, another friend of ours, amazing musician, and then I played some drums as well. Drums just sounded so good on that record. The room,
Yeah.
it was just this weird little office. We really, Jeremy and Frank and I really love the way that the drums turned out. They were Jeremy's drums, and he is a really amazing, technically gifted drummer, and just has an amazing musical ear. He can pick up almost any instrument and learn it in a
Wow.
weekend, basically. And he has great, amazing pitch too. So and tuning drums is can be challenging for those of us who
Sure.
aren't good at it, but other people are good at it, like Jeremy, and that's partly why those drums sounded just so amazing. It's the large reason why they sound, I think, really, really exciting and fun.
Yeah, man. Just briefly, how did you feel about the California EP, and how do you feel about Pacifico?
I love them both. I think they're both really. Uh, California is a different vibe than Pacifico. I think California has a lot more of that kind of wall of sound.
Yeah.
Very washy, very My Bloody Valentine meets
very much.
Ride meets Phil Spector type of thing. And I love that, especially for some of those songs that kind of feel like I think they benefited from that washiness. Whereas like Pacifico, I think is really interesting. Has some really interesting songs that I think like really pushed like what the band could do, and what the band the kinds of influences that the band wanted to bring in.
Sure.
There's some disco there, which was something that I definitely pushed for.
That's
I
awesome.
love disco music, and we just it was also just like another one of those things, kind of like the Mercury sessions, where it was like there was just a lot of experimentation. There was kind of a lot of like there was a lot of like abandon and fearlessness, just because no one was telling us to do this. No one wanted us to do this, I don't think. And so it was kind of like we were just like doing whatever we felt like we wanted to do in the moment, and there wasn't any consideration
Restrictions.
for maybe people won't like this, or maybe we should do something that would be a little bit more conventional, because that would be a little bit more catchy, or
Sure.
something like that.
Sure.
Whereas we didn't think about any of those things, and there are some songs on there that we basically just sort of pieced together in the studio. El Rey is one of those songs. We never played El Rey live in concert anytime, because we didn't know what the chords were. We didn't know
Wow.
we didn't know how to play them, because it was just thrown together. It was literally two songs, or it was one song. It was one music, and then I had a different song that I had the melody and lyric to. Yeah, and we just combined those, and that became that song El Rey. And so it was just pieced together in the studio largely. And so and then after you've mixed it all down, and you can't isolate the instruments, so you don't know you can't go back and listen to the listen to the instrument and try to discern like what are the chords he playing there. But so it was really fun and experimental, but also wanting to be very definitely wanting to be very much like a medicine, that band Medicine
Yeah, great band.
influence record for sure.
That's awesome, man. Well, what bring me through what's next, and kind of up, I guess, up to what you had, Eldorado.
Yeah, we did some more recordings after that, which I think are really strong and that are finally getting reissued.
Oh, cool.
We've been kind of slowly reissuing all those, having them remastered because a lot of the music wasn't available. But California Pacifico, El Rey, we did an EP called El Rey after that song wound up in a TV show. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Excuse me, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was on an episode of that show. So
that's awesome.
So we did an EP to support that, and then we did a split record with the band Duralux.
Oh yeah,
and so that had some songs. Yeah. This was after Pacifico, and then we did some more recordings. We did Face Your Fun. Which was a full length in the early 2000s, and that one was a kind of another sort of musical pivot for us. We went for something that was a lot more sort of straight up kind of new wave, kind of Echo and the Bunnymen, New Order, Joy Division kind of vibe. And then we did an EP called the Three Wheels EP.
Oh yes,
and that was and then shortly after that, Jeff Schroeder, our guitar player, he joined the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yes.
And so he was busy with them for the next like 15 years.
Yeah, I had him on a couple months ago. He's incredible.
Cool.
Super, super cool. Yeah, and you just did the Cave Sessions live songs recently. That turned out incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, we were really happy with how that turned out. Josiah Mazaski, he has a studio over here. He and Jeff work a lot, or especially when Jeff was in the Pumpkins, he worked with him a lot because that was how they worked with Billy. Is they would record stuff and send it to him in Chicago and vice versa, that whole thing. Yeah. So he was kind of like a local studio and he's got a really cool facility there. His place is called The Cave, and it is literally like a cave.
That's cool.
It sounds great in there though. And so really happy with how that turned out. I think it turned out really well.
Absolutely, man. What Lassie Foundation record are you most proud of?
Boy, they're all my children.
I'm sure it's hard.
No, I mean, they all have. There's a bunch of different eras of Lassie Foundation, and so they all kind of have their own sort of thing. And there are moments and there are songs in all of those eras that I really really enjoy, and I think do kind of stand up over time. But I would say probably that the California Pacifico era is probably the most well, it's the most popular, but I think that there was a lot of really interesting things going on. You know, just like what I was talking about earlier, there was just there's a lot of like just fun with experimentation and trying to just do something for the fun of it and not for any other reason.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost forgot. There was I almost forgot the whole record that we did called Face Your Fun. Or not Face Your Fun, but the El Dorado.
El Dorado. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great record.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a really fun record. It was fun. Well, it was fun in moments, but the band was kind of splintering at that time, and so it was difficult on the whole. But there were some really, really, I think some really just I don't know, some very good moments in it, really powerful moments in it, and some of those songs I think are really strong as well. And so
it's a great record.
Turned out really, really cool.
How come? Why didn't Lassie Foundation, or was there any label interest from any big ones, or like Tooth and Nail or something like that? What was the thought process with that?
Let's see. I don't really remember. I don't remember labels. I remember. Let's see. What did we do? we did work with some labels over the years for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, we worked with
Shogun,
with
right? Or
well, Shogun was our own imprint.
oh, okay.
But uh, we worked with
Velvet Blue.
Grand Theft Autumn,
Yeah.
which was at that time was a label under the Parasol umbrella, literally. And then we did. Let's see. Well, let's see. I think the California EP came out on
Velvet Blue, wasn't
Velvet
it?
Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and then Pacifico was a combination. What was that on? It was
Yeah,
a
I don't know.
combination of I'm spacing, sorry.
It's
But
okay, man. No worries. No worries.
yes, there wasn't a lot of interest from labels. We were doing a lot of club stuff, and we had some management from time to time, but nothing ever really like kind of broke through. And so we were just kept on, trying to do records and just keep playing as long as we could. And
Sure.
then and then life gets in the way, and people
It happens.
get married and have kids, and and all that stuff, and it gets harder to do those things. And I think by the time the Lassie Foundation broke up, I think we were kind of like that was about we were done for that moment.
Yeah.
And then kind of getting back together and doing Face Your Fun, and then the Three Wheels EP. Those are super cool. But then doing the Cave Sessions with Jason 71 back in the group, that was really fun. Because that was kind of like the classic lineup, if you can call it that, with Frank Lanz and Jason.
Is there anything in the future for you guys? Are you guys playing any shows at all, or a new record or anything like that?
No plans for that. At the moment, we have still working on doing the reissues, remasters, and reissues, and then also for the folks who supported our Kickstarter a while back, we have not forgotten about that EP. So that we've promised them, and so we're just asking for a little bit more patience with that, because we still have to figure out some logistical things, and we lost some time due to some unforeseen circumstances, and that's why it's taken us so long. So I just want to tell everybody anybody listening who gave to our Kickstarter, we haven't forgotten you, and thank you for your patience.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. All right, well, let's talk about your solo records briefly, and King, Queens, and 2 Days. Kind of bring me through those records individually, and kind of just what inspired you to write these records.
Yeah, I think the first record, King's Queens, which is getting the remaster that's going to happen next month, that record was originally kind of a collection of songs that I had sort of written over time, and just finally decided to record them properly. And then there were a few songs that I wrote really close to that recording, and my first time really sort of having to make all of the decisions, which was really challenging, and having to think about more parts and more tones and instrumentation that I normally would have done. And so that was a real great learning experience, and working with Frank Lanz as the producer, he did just some amazing things with it, and also got some amazing contributions from my friend Levi Nunez, who we co-wrote a couple of the songs together, and then also Richard Swift. I met during that time. He had just arrived in Southern California and was friends with Frank, and so he came around the studio, and so I got to know him, and then he was like, "Hey, would you mind if I tried something or other on this song or whatever?" And so I was like, "Yeah, man, go for it." And he just came up with some amazing things. He totally transformed one of the songs on that called "Coming Round Again" just really transformed the whole tone of the song into something
Wow.
that is way cooler than if I had been left to finish the song, producing it with my own devices. So that was really exciting. Moments like that, making that record. So it was a super fun record, really stressful for me in some ways, but we had a lot of fun making it. And so really excited for people who have heard it to hear the remaster, because it sounds really awesome. The vinyl sounds really, really good.
Awesome.
And then also hopefully some folks who haven't heard it before will get a chance to take a swing at it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great record, and that's cool. Having Richard Swift on that. He touched so many people musically and just overall, and I'm sure having that part of him always on that record is really special to you. So that's awesome to hear that. Let's talk about Two Ghosts.
I put out Two Ghosts really at the perfect time, which is right when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, that's right.
So
perfect.
The worst time to be doing anything.
I know, right?
But it was that was a real labor of love. That was kind of also a collection of songs I'd written over the years, in between Kings, Queens, and Two Ghosts, and then also it also captures some of the time that I spent when I lived in New York City and recording some of the songs there, and having to record some of the stuff like basically by myself, which was a new challenge. I had some coworkers who. I had one coworker who collected old microphones, and so he loaned me like 4 or 5 microphones that I used to record the drums, which was super exciting, and I think really made it. Some of the songs have a real interesting tonality to them, and then so some of the stuff was recorded there in New York. Some of it was recorded here in Los Angeles. Some of it are recorded at Frank Lenz's studio, which was at the time in Fullerton, and then some of it was recorded. I went and did one song out in Nashville with Steve Hindalong working on it.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Producing, and that was really fun and sounded really good. And so it was kind of a hodgepodge of stuff, but then Frank mixed it and he really just made all of these really disparate recordings, like recorded completely different times, places, equipment, everything, and really put a nice sort of consistency tonally to it that I think really makes the album super coherent and just a really like a warm and I think a kind of a thoughtful record in some ways. And I think that his care really put that extra sheen on top of it that I was really hoping to happen. So I'm really stoked with how it came out, and it's got some songs on it that I still really enjoy.
Yeah. Are you playing live at all, or are you just getting a chance to play any of these songs live at all?
I did. So during the pandemic, I did this sort of, for a little while at least, I did this kind of weekly show, I guess you could say, where I would perform. I'd do like a Instagram live thing, and then later post to YouTube. I'd do just like I'd sing some songs, play some songs on, and then I'd try to have a guest on, usually a friend of mine who is, someone who I think maybe my audience might really find interesting, and so it was really fun to have those conversations and get to talk to some of my friends in a way that
awesome.
I don't really talk to them in that way, about like really go deep into some of their creative work and learn about their creative lives, and so that was really fun. So I might do something like that again, and I am looking at maybe doing some shows, possibly around town, possibly out of town. I'm not sure yet exactly, but I would like to get out and do some more live stuff.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. Any potential new solo record other than, I know you're putting this vinyl out, but is there anything in the pipeline maybe about a new record?
Yeah, I've been writing some stuff. Got some songs that a couple of songs have been recorded, and then I've got some other things that are in various states of completion. So yeah, I'm hoping to do another solo thing. Also looking at doing maybe possibly, I don't know. I'd really like to make a disco record.
Do it, bro. Do it.
So, but I don't know. I don't know exactly how to make that authentic and but yet also fun, because I think we could all use a little bit more fun right now.
Absolutely,
So,
man. Totally get it, man. Awesome, man. Well, I know you can't predict the future, Wayne, but what do you think the future looks like for you?
Well, I'm hoping for health and for hopefully some job security is one of the things that I have a lot of anxiety about. Being a creative person in their middle-aged creative person, it's not a lot of places that want to hire you. So it can be a bit of a worry, unless you have a safety net, which a lot of people don't. So that kind of stuff, thinking about those things in the future. I really, in the immediate future, I want to try to find the time to get all of these creative projects done and keep moving, because I think that's what really keeps me driving, keeps me going, is just having another project to work on and trying to finish the ones that I have already opened the can of worms on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I love that. I love hearing that. And, for what it's worth, I really appreciate all the music that you've been a part of over the years. That's really not only influenced myself, but a lot of people that listen to this podcast, and just really super honored and to have you on and talk about your past and, just overall what you've done in a lot of people's lives. So I just really appreciate your time, Wayne, and I'm just really honored to have you on. Hey, thank you, listener, for tuning in again and again. I really appreciate it, guys. So thank you so much for tagging along. Really honored to have you on this journey. So thank you. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook at the Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, you know the drill. So again, thank you, listener. Wayne Everett, thank you so much for your time. Really honored to have you on. It's been a dream come true for me. So I really appreciate that. So thank you to Wayne Everett. You've got some incredible artists, guys, on the horizon, and you know it, nostalgia is still a heck of a drug. The podcast is produced by Wesley Hill, artwork by Jared Chase Bowser, and music by Brian Jaron. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, producer, and man of many talents, Brian Jaron.